That's Christopher Wray's problem. The intelligence says what it says. If he went out and lied about it or has to correct the record on it, that's what has to happen. We don't cover up the intelligence. That's not the answer.
Well, you know, pardons were given out to many people and they shouldn't have been given out. Like the Unselect Committee of Political Thugs was given a pardon because they destroyed all of the information from 2 years of hearings, and they should be arrested, but they were given pardons. They were also bad. Look, it was the worst president in the history of our country. We've had some bad ones, but he was the worst president.
A bombshell from the FBI. New emails released courtesy of Senator Chuck Grassley, where he explains the FBI was covering up election interference by the Chinese back in 2020. He posted this on X. He said, according to FBI records that we'll read through in the form of emails in just a second, Grassley says, the FBI headquarters, Christopher Wray and the rest of them, they suppressed intel about alleged Chinese interference in the 2020 election to avoid embarrassing Christopher Wray, who made conflicting testimony to Congress about the FBI, came to Congress and lied about Chinese interference. The FBI's job equals perform due diligence without politics in mind. Under Chris Wray's leadership, the FBI failed its mission. So we just translated Chuck Grassley. He's not done. He says, thanks, Director Patel, for working with Congress to provide these records to me. It's an important step to restoring American people's trust in the FBI and transparency, plus accountability. And so he posted much more on this over on his official Senate website. Some background on this, then we'll look at the actual emails. All right, I'm Chuck Grassley, and today the Senate Judiciary Committee now released internal FBI emails revealing the FBI suppressed intelligence of alleged Chinese interference in 2020, and they did it to protect Christopher Wray. Then Christopher Wray went to Congress, and Grassley calls it inaccurate and contradictory testimony. It's a lie. He lied to Congress. The FBI declassified and provided the requested records to Grassley that we'll look at, along with the accompanying cover letter. Now, after Grassley initially received some information about whistleblower disclosures, we got more info. The FBI emails offer an inside look at the Bureau's decision to recall and suppress another report. The FBI came out with this intelligence information report. They said, uh-oh, Chinese are hacking our stuff. The report contained information from a confidential human source saying the Chinese government was producing tens of thousands of fraudulent driver's license to manufacture mail-in votes for Joe Biden. And we've seen those reports. You can just look them up. There's tens of thousands. They caught, I think, 20,000 of them in Michigan, another 16,000 in Cincinnati at the ports of entry. Chinese people coming in with tens of thousands of IDs. And they worked. They worked. The barcodes worked. According to the FBI, these allegations, despite showing initial signs of credibility, were never investigated, allegedly. According to the FBI's sudden and abnormal decision to halt the investigation and to bury the report's existence, preventing any field offices, as well as any other intelligence community elements, from accessing or studying the documents. The reason the FBI said that they were burying this, well, it's because the reporting will contradict Director Wray's testimony. Now, these records smack of political decision-making, said Chuck Grassley. One way or another, intelligence must be fully investigated to determine whether it's true or if it's just smoke and mirrors. A bunch of emails came down, and let's get into some of them. Now, it looks like this was the cover letter that came over to Chuck Grassley from Marshall Yates, assistant director to the FBI, saying, all right, Chuck, you send us like 1,000 letters, so I guess we'll respond to one of them. You sent a letter back on June 17th. This is in response. Well, that's fast, man. 10-day response? That's nice to see from the FBI, finally. You wanted some information about a 2020 September 25th report called an IIR, Intelligence Information Report from the Feds. Now, in response to your inquiry, the Office of Congressional Affairs is committed to providing a substantive reply. We're going to attach them here. Now, following a directive from the FBI headquarters, the IRR was recalled, even though the IIR was coordinated and disseminated in textbook fashion, okay, from the emails. They're saying, here's a summary of what we're about to read. It was like textbooks, confidential human source, Chinese are rigging the election, here's the evidence, sent it in, boom. Somebody saw it and said, uh-oh. This IIR prompted significant attention throughout FBI headquarters. All the good FBI agents are like, what? China's rigging our election? For instance, according to an email requesting the recall, it was noted that the IIRAL sent out today is getting a lot of attention from all HQ divisions, which is why we need to recall it. And then the FBI just sat around and was like, no, China? What? No, Chinese influence, no. You don't remember an email? No, certainly not. Now, the recall was issued to, quote, re-interview the source because he gave him a bad interview. Although the source was re-engaged and provided additional context to support the initial claim, the FBI headquarters maintained its position decision not to republish the report. So they went back, talked to him again, like, oh crap, he said the same thing. Actually, he said it's even worse than we thought. One reason cited for not releasing this report, literally in quotes, they said the reporting will contradict Director Wray's testimony. The FBI leader will be made a liar if we tell people about this. So they hid it. They covered it up. So based on conversations with key individuals involved, Chuck Grassley tells us, it was conveyed that the recall of this report was abnormal. The rationale provided to Albany staff for the recall was that headquarters said the report was not authoritative enough, and that this characterization was met with disagreement by those in Albany. Other FBI feds were like, what? Looks pretty good to us. It was not authoritative. Remember, just like Hunter Biden's laptop was all the hallmarks of Russian disinformation. They're just liars. Internal emails reflect that Albany staff had concerns that suppressing this new report would be dangerous if we cite potential political implications as reasons for not putting this out. Like, we're going to be busted, man, if we bury this because Christopher Wray is going to be made to look a fool. Emphasizing that it's not the role of the analysts to align intelligence with public testimony. That's Christopher Wray's problem. The intelligence says what it says. If he went out and lied about it or has to correct the record on it, that's what has to happen. We don't cover up the intelligence. That's not the answer. Albany staff further warned against the FBI assuming the sole role of gatekeeper of the intelligence community, saying, wait a minute, we're not going to tell the whole country about Chinese agents stealing our election from out from under us, emphasizing that suppressing field-generated reporting could deprive other IC elements of the opportunity to weigh in on this. They could corroborate it or discredit it. Are you guys having Chinese people come in here with tens of thousands of fake IDs? Yes or no? Although an intelligence analyst requested further research and re-engagement with the source, headquarters ultimately decided no new report. Well, we haven't gotten anything new on that, even after the source was re-interviewed. Now, as seen in today's production of the emails that we'll look at, the source appeared to be reliable, and the FBI did not close the source for cause or lack of credible information at all. And additional emails show that the Foreign Influence Task Force, called FITF, did not approve the reissuance of the new report, citing concerns that's not authoritative, and there could be disinformation by foreign actors. They are the disinformation. It's the same crap as the so-called CIA experts, 51 of those liars, man, who all knew what they were doing and lied about it to try to rig an election. It worked. Potential for disinformation by foreign actors, you are the disinformation, FBI. However, other than a request for information to U.S. Customs and Border, we have found no information to indicate that FITF China aggressively investigated the reported information, right? So the American agency that's supposed to look into China did not do it, despite corroborating intergovernmental reporting and logistical investigative leads and more. Now, finally, because of this episode, FBI says to Chuck Grassley, the FBI headquarters, after all this happened, set a new requirement on the field for the 2020 election. Soon as this report hit everyone's inboxes and freaked everyone out, they said to everybody, all further notice, all raw reporting concerning the election will now require headquarters coordination. None of that was required before, but they wanted to keep tabs. If there were any election problems, don't email about it. Come talk to Christopher Wray. Overall, the records produced today that we'll look at reflect the broader sentiment within Albany and the field office that the recall decision and the resulting suppression of the support raised serious questions about the integrity of the intelligence and political pressures. And at this time, the FBI is unaware that any federal record preservation requirements were violated. Under record schedules approved by NARA, recalled or superseded intelligence reports may be removed from circulation, and they're not required to be permanently retained, right? So they just nuked it. While the underlying IIR was recalled, it was not permanently deleted from the Sentinel system, so it wasn't nuked. Likewise, at this early stage in our review, it appears that related communications were also preserved. Nevertheless, because we're at an early stage of our review, we're going to continue to look into it, but we did have some emails for you. And today's production contains minimal redactions to protect certain personal identifiable information, source identities, and other sensitive info. The FBI looks forward to continuing to engage with you, and we will accommodate as best we can. Thank you for supporting the FBI and our mission. Sincerely, Marshall Yates, Assistant Director under Kash Patel. So that went over to Grassley. So here we've got one email. This came out sent September 25th, 2020. Okay, rewind the clock. That's like months from the election. 11:59 a.m. Here's the subject, serial. Sentinel serial. Chinese government production and export of fraudulent U.S. driver's license to Chinese sympathizers in the U.S. in order to create tens of thousands of fraudulent mail-in votes for Joe Biden. That's the subject, and it goes to everybody. Check it out. FBI here, whole list of people, all of them. Hey everyone, I spoke with someone earlier in case he receives inquiries from components at headquarters, but to make sure others involved in this report are in the loop, I got a call from two special agents in charge at FBI HQ, who indicated this report that we just sent, this one, is getting highlighted within CD, and they had a few questions. They said, well, we're looking at it at HQ. Now, I was initially concerned that we may have missed some level of required coordination because it's a sensitive topic, but that wasn't the case. This guy's like, I thought I screwed something up because they're breathing on my neck on this, but it turns out no. He says the IIR, this report, was coordinated and disseminated in textbook fashion. I thought I was in trouble, but I wasn't. Like, we did this by the book. Though not required, they did request if we get further information about the election, we give them advance notice of our intention to disseminate this. He says, okay, that's weird. Well, that's easy. And blank or I can handle that. So sure, like, we'll give you a heads up. They also provided their initial assessment of the info if you want it. They haven't verified the alleged activity is occurring and believe it could be a part of their disinformation campaign towards the election. Just like the Russians too. These people are criminals. Something in the IIR process is definitely going well. If we receive a call within a few hours from the HQ about one of our reports, nicely done. Okay, shout out to this FBI agent. He's like, man, we crushed this. We got this great report, by the book, 10 out of 10, 5-star review, send it over to them. They called us back like in an hour. Great job, man. We just hit a home run. Then we fast forward. Now we're in October. Got a redacted email. Don't even give us the date on that one. Draft election for the IIR for coordination. Classified by so-and-so, someone else. This guy's from FIDIF, China. Now he says, draft election IIR for coordination. So September it goes out. They're excited. Hey, we just got called. Headquarters really likes it. Forward it over to FIDIF, China. It's October. Election is right around the corner. Clock is counting down. Hey, thanks so-and-so. We'll discuss and get back to you tomorrow morning. May I ask for a quick call with Albany as part of the team here. Thanks. Unit Chief from FIDIF. That was sent October 6, 4:40 p.m. Right before that, that was in response to this. All right, so he's responding. Thanks, I'll look at it. First letter he gets, hey, the following is an attachment of a draft report that was disseminated on August 25th by Albany. They sent it out to everybody. And then we had these people, Tanya Ugoretz and Nikki Flores from Counterintelligence. They recalled it. They said, uh-oh, their Chinese handlers called them and said, get that out. So Nikki Flores and Tanya recalled it. Now this week he says, I am acting for Albany. And because our CRO is currently on administrative leave due to COVID, so please ensure he's CC'd. Now the source was recontacted that was in the original report and asked to re-verify the reliability of their subsource and assured the source handler they were very confident about this subsource's reliability. Like, no, he's like from China. The subsource's identity was captured in the source's files at this location, and this location. However, the first subsource is unwitting of the source's U.S. government involvement. In fact, the subsource is retired probably from Chinese intelligence in blank, where he was the blank, 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 blank. Now, a new context statement acknowledging the lack of knowledge regarding the ultimate source of the information has been added. So we added this to the report. It says, the source obtained the information from an identified subsource who claimed they obtained the information from an unidentified PRC government official. The access and placement of the ultimate subsource of the information is unknown, but it is being reported due to the nature of the threat, right? So it's like, it is several steps removed, but they're excited. If this addresses the concerns of these agents, like these two agents, Nikki and Tanya, they're like, no, that's not really reliable because it says the Chinese are going to help Joe and we don't want that to happen. And if they are helping Joe, so what? Because we love Joe and hate Trump. So then they said, well, okay, fine. We'll clarify. We'll add another sentence that explains exactly the chain, but we still think it's reliable and you should look at it. So if this addresses their concerns, let us know. Then I will proceed to get permission and approval prior to dissemination. Thank you in advance. Let me know. So then FIDIF China, and I love to know these dudes' names, but says, okay, thanks. We'll discuss, get back to you tomorrow. May I ask for a quick call? Not a lot of urgency there. Thanks. So whatever. He gets the email. It's late Friday. Another email, redacted. Can't see anything. Another email, redacted. Can't see anything. Here's one, September 28th. Okay, so we go back to September. So we had some October emails. Now we go back to September, and this one got sent on the 28th from Albany. Subject, recent release of counterintelligence. It says, please click below to review the routine CIIR. Blank. Based on a CHS reporting from blank, collected by Special Agent so-and-so, identified and drafted by so-and-so, says we are in receipt of a Chinese talent program recruitment invitation at a university. We got another report. Chinese government is producing U.S. driver's licenses. And a recall on that, right? Substantive recall came back on that email. That looks like that was sent out, right? That might actually be the email or the sequence of emails. One gets sent, one gets recalled back out. Another one we can't read. Same date, September 28th. Looks like just more evidence that the emails were sent, 3:58. Hey gents, hope you've had a great day. Quick heads up. I met with blank today. She advised that his most recent reporting, specifically regarding the fraudulent use of driver's licenses obtained from an individual individual in China. I asked blank if they had read about the aforementioned fraudulent use of these licenses in a newspaper, and blank said no. Blank also provided the name of the person who provided this information. I'm going to document this information as a supplement contact report as opposed to a source reporting document. The reason for this is I want to continue as feasible as possible to safeguard this person's identity. In another email, also sent September 28th, earlier in the day, same day. Blank and I discussed this after the source made this reporting, as the three main things the source stated were this. One, China is trying to influence the election in favor of Joe, obviously. The threat of TikTok to U.S. national security, which they used, probably making the IDs for those ballots off of the information that they siphoned out of TikTok. The China imported U.S. driver's licenses. They were documented. We've seen actual reports before the election of this. Like, why do we have 20,000 fake IDs coming in here? They had no idea. Given the specifics we received in the initial reporting, my first opinion was that the source wants to help and is probably supplementing his open reporting via open sources, and we're trying to follow and figure out what is happening. Someone else said this earlier in the day. I just got a call from a special agent. Not surprisingly, all raw reporting concerning the election will now require headquarters. That was not required as of last week, but now they know you know about the Chinese. One thing they asked is if blank could address with the source. Is the source or subsource aware of open source reporting about the seizure of thousands of licenses in Chicago? They knew about that. Further open sources began to suggest these driver's licenses were being used to vote fraudulently. Yeah. Says, I'm not at my computer right now. I checked the anonymous email account. No response from the source yet. I'll check again. If not, I'll try to approach him in person. This one came out from Albany FBI to other Albany people. Pursuant to a conversation I had with blank, I'm forwarding you this for visibility purposes. And I had another conversation. I attempted to recontact this source. Haven't gotten a call back. Hey everyone, I spoke with so-and-so earlier in the case. He receives inquiries from HQ, but just to make sure you're in the loop, I also received a call from two other special agents at the FBI HQ who indicated that this report was getting highlighted within the Central Division, and they had questions. I was initially concerned we might have missed some things, but no, this was textbook. They provided their assessment, and the rest we know. I had a conversation 2 to 3 times. October 1st, what's this? From Albany to another Albany. Says, all right, good afternoon, everyone. Now, I'm not trying to be a pain on this. They're still saying additional questions for this person's source about the Chinese hack. I'm not trying to be a pain on this, says some Fed. After taking some time to think things over, I just want to voice my opinion and concerns on this issue to make clear I do not agree with the reasoning for not putting this out. We should be putting this out. Blank. Regarding the below, I'm not satisfied with the reasoning of needing a new interview and a new HQ review, as these things are everyday operational and administrative requirements. Now, most concerning to me is stating the reporting would contradict Director Ray's testimony. I found this troubling because it implied to me that one of the reasons we aren't putting this out is for a political reason. FBI sending this in their emails. Which goes directly against our organization's mission to remain apolitical and to simply state what we know. Man, shout out to this FBI agent. Likewise, at the field operational level, I do not feel it is our job to assess whether or not our intelligence aligns with Ray. Rather, we provide intelligence for people way above our pay grade, and he can make the call of whatever the FBI is seeing as a whole. Now, I also do agree that we have an obligation to not put out reckless information if we know something to be false. However, we're also not in a sole position to determine a reporting validity, as we only make up one intelligence agency and an incredibly small fraction of all the other agencies. Now, while it's entirely possible that our subsource did not get this information from China, it's also entirely possible he did, as just like in our own government, it's plausible that a blank would have a source within the government. And so recognizing that unidentified Chinese officials and the plausibility of information would not have access to the match selection, I elected to include the following context statements. I said, the acquisition of the source's information passed through a subsource claimed to be in contact with unidentified Chinese officials, leaving the veracity of the information questionable, but it is being reported because it's a serious threat. Now, per the report, the dissemination threshold is lower for threat reporting, right? This guy says, look, I looked at the manual. Dissemination is appropriate here, and I can determine it's a threat, and so I believe this allowed us to release this, and it highlights our lower confidence in the information. However, this statement was requested to be reworded to say, well, the information's actually bad, right? It's bad. Came from a subsource, unidentified. This guy says, look, overall, if we want to have a disagreement about the meetings of how this stuff works, the rules, I'm fine with that. Now, my concern is that I think it gets dangerous if we cite potential political implications as reasons for not putting information out. Further, I think we are starting to drift too far into being the sole decider insider for the intelligence community about the information we gather. I think we should at least draft and submit this to the FBI to review. And if they decide they want to cancel it, they can. Again, I obviously don't make the decisions. I'm not sure if FBI HQ has provided you all with additional reasoning of why they told us to recall the report, but I just wanted to express my concerns. Happy to talk about this anytime. Very respectfully, a good FBI agent. It says a new 1023 will be needed. Again, the reporting, someone else said, right? So that came, I think, probably before that. The reporting will contradict Wray's testimony because Wray lied to Congress. Nope, no evidence of any of that happening. Yeah, it was. Lots more redacted here, as we can see. They're talking about deleting joint message exchanges. Let's take a look at this paragraph. Now, here's a new contact this morning that came in related to this report, saying this contact report is intended to serve as a supplement to the original report, which was the contact report related to another source report. Specifically, this supplements the chain of acquisition. So-and-so obtained this information from a China-based individual named so-and-so, who is approximately blank years old. Blank 3 had last contact with someone via Telegram, no longer had the last Telegram messages, said we did not use email, said not a member of the Communist Party, and so former title was so-and-so, lots of redactions. And so we talked to this person, they gave us some info. Scale of 1 to 10, how confident is the source information? 9 to 10, very confident. How trustworthy? I was able to collaborate and corroborate some information. Seems very knowledgeable. The source was found. The CHS called in a complaint about another case, and so more details on who this subsource is and how this all worked. But you can see lots of redactions here, but a lot of emails back and forth showing us what was actually happening. So FBI knew what they were doing, right? They had evidence that the Chinese were rigging our elections, and they just sat on it, covered it up because it would make Christopher Wray look like an idiot or a liar either way. But now Chuck Grassley got his hands on the documents, and I would say it is a bombshell to the extent that it's in writing. I mean, we already knew the FBI was covering this up. I think this is the FBI's version of the laptop cover-up, right? The laptop cover-up was sent out by those 51 liars who signed that letter, who were conducted and coordinating with the CIA. Now the FBI did the same thing. They had evidence the Chinese were interfering with our elections. They lied and covered it up. And we had a bunch of enemies inside our government who were doing that. And Trump got asked about another one called Alejandro Mayorkas. And today someone asked about Alejandro potentially being prosecuted for his criminality. He was supposed to be a good steward of public affairs in the Department of Homeland Security, just like Chris Wray was supposed to be a good steward of the FBI. Both of them failed, or maybe they were successful if their end game was to wreck American institutions and water down the fabric of our nation. They were very successful in that. Now Trump is saying there will be repercussions for their damages.
Julio Rosas, Blaze Media, sir. A couple months ago, I ran into former DHS Secretary Mayorkas, and I asked him a couple questions about his disastrous handling of the border. He didn't like my questions. But the number one question that I heard from people in responding to my video was, why hasn't he been arrested yet?
Great question.
Obviously, you guys are cleaning up the mess that was made deliberately for the past 4 years, and so people want accountability. It's great to see that the border is secured, and it's great to see the state level cooperation, but I guess I would ask you, why hasn't he been held accountable, or anybody really?
Well, you know, pardons were given out to many people, and they shouldn't have been given out. Like the Unselect Committee of Political Thugs was given a pardon because they destroyed all of the information from 2 years of hearings, and they should be arrested, but they were given pardons. Was he given a pardon, Mayorkas? Was he not?
I don't believe so, sir.
Well, I'd take a look at that one, because what he did is beyond incompetence. Something had to be done. Now, with that being said, he took orders from other people, and he was really doing the orders, and you could say he was very loyal to them, because it must have been very hard for him to stand up and sit up and, you know, talk about what he allowed to happen to this country and be serious about it. So he was given orders. If he wasn't given a pardon, I could see looking at that. In fact, why don't you take a look at it, Kristen? He was impeached, but yeah, it was just a fake impeachment. It was a fake impeachment. Why don't you take a look at it? I think he was so bad. They were all so bad. Look, it was the worst president in the history of our country. We've had some bad ones, but he was the worst president. But somebody told Mayorkas to do that, and he followed orders, but that doesn't necessarily hold him harmless. So take a look at it. Very good question, actually. Thank you.
Yeah, very good question. Why do the Republicans not have their own 2020 Select Committee to go investigate all of these claims? The CIA fraud they committed upon us, DHS fraud they committed on January 6th at the border, and FBI fraud. Now in the emails, they knew the Chinese were bringing in tens of thousands of fake IDs, and they allowed it to happen. And Christopher Wray lied to the American people about it, and the FBI covered it up to protect him. So now, hopefully, repercussions are coming for all of these people who abuse their positions of power. No one's above the law. Select committees are valid, apparently, even if they're unlawfully constituted. Who cares? Hopefully hopefully the Republicans figure out what they're doing and investigate the people who broke the law.